Alright, so I need to change the IP address on my PNET Labs box. So I thought I'd make a video while I was at it on how to change the IP, whether you want to do static IP or DHCP. This guy's going to show you how to go into the configuration files within Linux, within Ubuntu, and modify it appropriately so it works. So what I've done in the description of the video is I've included this full file, and it contains the info, which is a list of commands that you can put in to view the current necessary information, then an example of a DHCP config if you want to use DHCP, and an example of static config, which I'm going to be using. But I've modified the config a little bit, and what I've done is I've included comments on each line above the commands in the script that tell you what each portion of the script actually does. So when you come back to view your IP address config in say 6, 12, 18 months time, and you've forgotten how the entire config and the file works, you can review all these comments that I've added, which explains everything. So I'm going to be using my static config example and just quickly go over how this works. So automatically enable Eth0 at startup. You need to determine which interface you're using on your box. Chances are it's probably Eth0. And then once you've determined which interface you're using, you can just change the script appropriately. Eth0 typically bonds to PNET 0, Eth1, PNET 1, Eth2, PNET 2, so forth and so forth. So automatically start Eth0 at startup, manually configure Eth0, automatically start the PNET 0 bridge interface, because the Eth0 and PNET 0 interfaces are bridged together, and then the IP address config goes on the PNET 0 interface. So I've done this here. You'll probably notice that there's no DNS server config in there. That's because you don't put the DNS server config in here for PNET Labs. It goes elsewhere, and I'll show you that in a second. This bridges Eth0 to PNET 0. So that physical NIC is bridged to this virtual interface, which has the IP address on it. And then disable spanning tree if you want to disable it. So I'm going to take this command first to show you where the DNS server config is set up, and I've got two other videos on my channel on that. One that shows you how to configure it, and two, another part that shows you how to make it persistent. So when the PNET Labs box reboots, it will keep your DNS config. So I've got two videos on that. Check them out if you haven't got your DNS working already. Here's the DNS config, which is why we don't need to add the DNS config within the network configuration. Here is what my network configuration currently looks like. Ignore this part, this is just one of those NAT clouds. This one here, this is very similar to how it would be out of the box on a PNET Labs install. And I'm currently using DHCP, and I want to change that to use static. So I'm going to use nano to change it. I'm going to delete these lines here, all the way down to bridge STP. I'm going to delete all these lines, but I'm not going to delete any of these because these are for the other interfaces. And all I'm going to do is simply copy and paste in the script. Now it's a bit longer than the previous one, but that's because it includes all the comments and it breaks everything up a bit. I'm just going to delete that primary network interface line as well. Right, so primary network interface, Eth0 and PNET0. You would change this to 1 and 1 and 2 and 2 if you've got a different setup. Auto start Eth0 interface at the startup. Eth0 IP is manual. You don't set this to static, you set it to manual, and you put the bridge IP address information as static. If you put this as static, it tells the OS that Eth0 is going to have its own static IP config separate to the bridge, and it will break things. So make sure it's manual. Just use the script that I've included in the description. Automatically start the bridge interface. Put the IP address config on. Bridge Eth0 and PNET0 together. Turn spanning tree off. Then what we're going to do is come out and we're going to save that. You can see I've put the IP address as 0.24. And we're going to write that. So that's now saved. In Nano it's Control and X and then Y to save. Then I'm going to reboot the device. Shut down hard now, restart now. So we're just going to reboot that device and we're just going to give it a minute to come back up. Okay, so the device has come back up and I can verify with ifconfig that PNET0 is using the IP address 192.168.0.24. You can see that there. And just to go back into the interfaces file, just to show you, cat on the interfaces file. This is the config that it's using. All here. So that is how to change the IP address and gateway config on the interface. Hope that helps you. Done.